Kakadosh Boker Tov, Masechet Moed Katan Daf Amud Aleph 28a1. Says the Gemara, right? If you remember yesterday, we had a machloket to do with that the women, when they would pass away, they would not come and put them on the floor because of the kavod. So Amri Narda said, what are we talking about in the Mishnah? Only for a chaya, which means only for a woman that she just gave birth and then she died during childbirth. However, though other women, they would put on the floor. But Rabbi Lazar argues and he says, no, even other women, it says in a pasuk, what does that mean? Immediately right after the death of Miriam was the kvura of hers, and we don't push off even for a small amount of time, and we don't put the bed on the rechov, in the public or whatever it is, even if she passes away, not during the time of the meaning, like when she's done any dar, childbirth, whatever it is, you don't put her on the floor. Says Rabbi Lazar, do you know that Miriam also died with a kiss of death? It's a very famous concept in English, but this comes from mitat neshika, from the Gemara. Mitat neshika, right? The kiss of death, right? Atya sham Moshe, because we learn a gezerah shava from sham. As it says, "Vatamot sham Miriam and Vatamot Miriam." So why does it say then al pi Hashem, to the mouth of Hashem? It says, it doesn't sound good when you say that Hashem is going to give the kiss of death to the women, because then it sounds kilu that chas v'shalom. But in our mind, we think Hashem is kilu, the smell king. Because whenever we think about a king, it's like, and then he's kissing the woman. It's like it doesn't sound good for the man to the man. It also doesn't sound good, but it's just the concept, right? What? No, that's what we're saying. So therefore, for the nekeva, it's more of a ganai. So since it's more of a ganai, so therefore we come and we do not mention it, even though we have a gezerah shava that it was done through mitat neshika. Remember, mitat neshika is the lightest of all the mitot, which, if you remember the Gemara Berachot, right? The Gemara Berachot said it was like, this is Chet Amud Aleph, right? 81 over there. But there the Gemara says, sorry, we're in Kaf Chet Amud Aleph. The Gemara Berachot was Chet Amud Aleph, right? So the Gemara Berachot Chet Amud Aleph says is that it's like, you have a hair in a liquid, in milk. And then you come and you take it out, it comes out very, very easy. So therefore, that's called the mitat neshika. That's what it's compared to. However, the most, right, the worst death, right, meaning the most powerful, was askira, which was basically, that was like what we called, maybe it could be the COVID, which means a person, they cannot feel they say that, but they can't breathe, right? It's a problem. They cannot breathe. They see it's like a type of a form of a strangulation. They cannot start breathing. So therefore that is called, and therefore they compare it to the Bermudan Triangle. No, the Bermudan Triangle, if you remember. Bermudan Triangle. Because there it says that, there it's Rashi. That's where the Bermudan Triangle is, right? The Rashi there says that there's a place, right, in the sea where it does not accept any metal, any boats. And the Rashash there on the Gemara explains is because it's like a magnet, that what it is that when they go over it, the magnet comes and it sucks in any type of a metal. And that's why what happens, right? And that's what they're talking about. So, Kefiva Veshet. So now says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yami, says Rabbi Yami, Lama nismecha mitat Miriam leparashat Para Aduma. This is a very famous Rashi at the beginning of Parashat Para. Why is it that there's the proximity between the death of Miriam and Parashat Para Aduma? Lomar lecha, to tell you, ma Para Aduma mechaperet, just like the Para Aduma is going to be mechaper, which means it atones, so too mitatan shel tzadikim mechaperet, so too the death of tzadikim is going to atone. Amar Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar, Lama nismecha mitat Aaron lebigdei kiuna. Why is the death of Aharon, right, close to the Bigdei Kiuna? So he says over here, to tell you Bigdei Kiuna mechaperim, just like the Bigdei Kiuna is a kapara. We read this on Kippur. Yeah? We mentioned it. Remember, when you say on Kippur, during the Seder Avodah over there, we bring down that all the Bigadim were actually an atonement for something. It's based upon the Gemara. So it says, just like the Bigdei Kiuna mechaperim, so too mitatan shel tzadikim mechaperet. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned the Braita. Met pitom zoi mitah hatufa. The person dies all of a sudden, it's considered mitah hatufa. Chala yom echad met, right? However, though, if he went and he died, chatuf. Amen chatufa means it's cut off, right? But if he was sick for one day and then he died, right? Zoi mitah dechufa. So that's considered mitah dechufa, which means it's very quick, but it's not chatufa. Meaning there's different levels of, that they're going by very, very quickly. Obviously, yeah. There's no, it says here, there's no, the Tosafot actually say, we don't know what the difference, right? We don't know what the difference between them is. We just know one's called Chatufa, Dechufa, right? Something's Dachuf, right? Or something's Chatuf, but we don't know what the actual difference is. Rabbi Gamliel says, no. If a person dies after 1 day, Zoi mitat magefa, that's considered mitat magefa, Shneimar, Ben Adam, and it's written over there, which means the fact that he spoke to them in the morning and then in the nighttime his wife passed away, so therefore within the day, so if a person is going to pass away, that means they got sick and then they passed away, that's called a magefa. It's not called amita dechufa. Okay, shnei yamim, if it's 2 days, right, and then he passed away, so amita dechuya, that means he was pushed off. And shlosha yamim, if it was 3 days, then it's mitat ge'ara, then it's like he's being told off. Arba'a is mitat nezifa. Nezifa, if you remember, was a form of excommunication. Right, we learned it from Midian over there. Chamisha was mitat kol adam. Right, after 5 days, that's like everything, which means that it's not an honor shvina shamayim. That means if a person got sick and only after 5 days he passed away, so then that's not an honor shvina shamayim. That's a regular thing of death. Okay, because basically since he already received that he's going to die within 5 days, so if we don't look at it as like a mitah pitomit that it's all of a sudden, but rather he had 5 days to start coming and start. So it's not immediately. Okay, so that's what we're trying to say. That wasn't because of karet or anything else. Amar Bichanin says Bichanin, Maikra, what is a pasuk that gives us a hint to this? It says Hen karevu yamecha lamut. Right, this is in Devarim. Okay. So it says Hen karevu yamecha lamut. What does it mean Hen karevu yamecha lamut? It says Hen is 1, karevu is 2, because karevu is in plural. Right, so Hen, right, behold karevu, that it became close, but karevu is in plural, so that's 2. Yamecha, right, is also Lashon Rabim, which means 2. So 2, right, and 1 is 5. So you see from here, Sacha Kola becomes Chamisha, Hen is 1, Shekem Lashon Yevani, Korin Lachat Hen. Because in Yevani, in Greek, the word Hen means 1. So therefore we know that it's 1 day. So therefore after 5 days, Hen Karevu Yamecha Lamut, which he was speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu, which one? Yeah. So therefore he comes and he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling him that he's going to die, right? So he comes and he says, so therefore, that's what we know, that it's not going to be, right? It's not going to be, right? It's not going to be, how do you call it? And let's go. Next, when we're talking about now, what about 50 years? Met b'chamishim shana. If a person passed away, right, after 50 years. Yeah? So he says, what does that mean? Zui mitat karet. That is karet. So here we're learning the mitat karet is 50 years. Okay?
Thank you, everybody.
52 shana, after 52 years. Yeah? Zui mitatot shel Shemuel HaRamati. Right? This is the death of Shemuel HaRamati. Right? And therefore, that's what he's trying to say over here. Right, that it's going to be okay, because obviously Shemuel HaRamati was not chayav karet, but rather HaKadosh Baruch Hu took his life in order that he shouldn't see the death of Shaul HaMelech. So therefore, it's mistaber to learn from here, right, that we're going to see later on. Okay, Shishim, it's going to be, that's what he mentioned, yeah. Shishim, after, right, 60 years, so he says, Zoi mita bidei shamayim, that is considered mita bidei shamayim. Remember, the mitah bidei shamayim is almost like karet, but it's a little bit lower of a level. Okay, so karet is a person before the time. Many times it could also happen metaridi, which means without children. Right? The chiyuv mitah bidei shamayim is only just a mitah mukdemet, which means it's just earlier, but it's not karet. So there's a few levels. If you remember, we mentioned there's daled mitot bet, arba mitot betin, and after arba mitot betin you have karet, and then mitah bidei shamayim. Amar Morzutra, not always. Amar Morzutra. Morzutra says, Maikra. What does it mean in the pasuk? Tichtiv tavo bekelach elei kaver. What does it mean bekelach? The gematria shitinavu. So this is the gematria of shishim. Okay, so that means that's what he says. Since bekelach is right bet zikna, it means shishim. So that's how we know. Shivim is seva. If a person passed away at the age of 70, it's seva tova. Shemonim kivurot. Tichtiv, as it says in the pasuk. ימי שנותן בהם 70 שנה, ואם בגבולות 80 שנה. אמר רבא says, מ-50 ועד 60 שנה זוהי מיתת כרת. says from 50 to 60 is karet. Yeah. So now 1 second. So why didn't we mention all the other years? Which means that the years between 50 to 60, mishum kivodo shel Shemuel Aramati, because of the kavod of Shemuel Aramati, which means if the Braita would have mentioned, right, between the ages of 50 to 60, that it's going to be karet, so then what are you going to do with Shemuel? So obviously, right, it would have been a problem. It's because that we just didn't mention the rest of the years, but we know that from 50 to 60 is going to be this. Rav Yosef, according to, that's what he says now, Rav Yosef, when he was at the age of 60, he went and he made a big party for the rabbis. Amar, he says, he's out of karet, which means, by the way, even until today, a lot of people, they do that at the age of 60 and then at the age of 70, right? They do a seudah, right? There's a seudat zikna, and you have it in the look in the blue books, you know, the book of the Pidyon Ben and the Chanukat Bayit. There's a whole thing. There's a whole thing of at the age of 60 and the age of 70. No, that's Tunisia. Yes, that's why. Abaye comes and he says, "Nehi denafik lemi mor karet deshane ni karet yomem nofik mor." Just 1 second. You're not anymore in the karet of years, because since he passed the year of 60, right? So then, okay, fine. So now he's not in karet of years, but there's karet of days, which means, let's say a person was going to live until 62, right? So now you could, if he lives until 61, there's no karet of years because he passed 60, but there's karet of yamin because now he didn't live to what he was supposed to live. So Amalei, he says, nekot lachmia palga bidach. He says still at least he's got half of it, meaning he was saved at least from the years, the karet of years. So that's already enough, and therefore he wanted to make a party. He wanted to meet a party. Rav Huna nach nafshe pitom. Do you know what happened? That Rav Huna passed away all of a sudden. So the rabbis were afraid, because we just said in right at the beginning of the daf, if a person passed away right away, that's mitat chatufa. So he says Tana lu zuga de. So until the Talmidei Chachamim and the Yav, they went and they said lo shanu ela shelo igia legvurot. That's only if a person didn't get to gvurot and then they pass away, gvurot, which is 80, and then they pass away suddenly, then it's something bad. Avali igia legvurot, but once they become gvurot, zoi mitat neshika, the opposite. That is mitat neshika. Now, if you remember, how do we explain this? We explain this with what? On a mishmar. On a mishmar, we explain this. With a mishmar, you were here. Last week? No, it wasn't last week. We explained this in the mishmar, if you remember, with the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, in the name of the Arizal HaKadosh, Parashat Vaychi. If you remember, we did the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh went and he said, right, when it says Vayikrevu Yimei Yisrael Lamut, so there it says Vayikrevu Yimei Yisrael Lamut, there it says the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. He brings a midrash. The midrash says that people, they pass away like a candle. In Spanish, right, and this is brought down in the Sefer of the veladores, of the ones that they take care of the body right before, sometimes the neshama pass away, it blows out like a candle. What does it mean? A candle is little, right? And all of a sudden, very peaceful, that's tov. Why is it like that? So if you remember there, the Arizal HaKadosh explains that a person has chelkei neshama. And the chelkei neshama is according to every single day that he's supposed to live in this world. So therefore, every single day that he finishes in this world, that chelek of the neshama goes up to Shemaim and it finishes. And that's the reason why, if you remember, we explained that Rabbi Naim gave once an entire shiur on this. That's the reason why we do vidui, kriyat shema l'mita, every single night. Why? Because you're doing it on that chelek of the neshama, which means that chelek of the neshama doesn't come back down again. That chelek of the neshama, you're finished with. So therefore, it goes away. Now, what happens is, at the end of a person's life, right, he doesn't have any more neshama left. He's only got one. So therefore, that's why it goes out like a candle. It goes out very, very peaceful. And that's the explanation. We think the explanation means we're speaking in plural for everybody. No. Anishmoten means every single night we give HaKadosh Baruch Hu that chelek of the neshama. And therefore, it's pekudolach. It's by you. That chelek of the neshama. So therefore, that's the explanation, right? So here it makes sense. Why? Once a person got to givurot, that means that all of a sudden now they're at the end of their life. They have just, so if he dies right away, just like immediately, that's not considered the mita chatufa. The guy, he lived until 97, so he's going to pass away immediately, right? That's mitat neshika. That's opposite. That's actually something very, very good. Look it up. Beautiful Rechaim HaKadosh. Okay, so it says over here, Amar Rava. Rava comes in. He says, Chaye baneh umezoneh. Listen to this Gemara. Chaye baneh mezoneh. Very famous, right? Life, right? Which means how long a person is going to live. Children and parnasa, la bizchuta talia minta. Has nothing to do with zechuyot, ela b'mazala talia minta. Everything has to do with the mazal. Okay, so that's what it means over here. Okay, fine. Obviously, yeah, there's a whole thing here. Okay, there's a whole question here. Okay, but it's to do with mazal. Tehar Rabba v'Rav Chasta. But look at Rabba v'Rav Chasta. Tarvayu Rabbanan tzadikehu. Both of them were big rabbis, big tzaddikim, right? The matzlu, more matzle vatimitra, more matzle vatimitra. Each one were able to pray and immediately rained. So imagine big tzaddikim. Immediately they prayed and it rained. Rav Chasta chayet tishin v'tarten shini. Rav Chasta lived until 92. Rabba chayar bain. Rabba only lived until 40. Berav Chasta shitin ulule. Right, the house of Rav Chasta, they went and they did 60 weddings. Right, imagine that means he saw 60 weddings of his children and grandchildren. Okay, some people say 60 is lav davka, but I'm saying, but it's a it's a larger amount of number. Berabba shitin tichle, right? There were 60 cases of shechol, which means that basically the deaths, right? That means in the house of Rabba there were a lot of deaths. Berav chasta semida lekalbeh, right? They had solet chitim, which is fine flour they gave to the dogs, right? To the klavim. Velamit ba'eh, and they didn't even need. Berabba nama de sarelin, they used to give barley bread to human beings. They didn't have enough. So imagine one of them, Mamash, was in poverty and saw death, and they were both tzaddikim. You know who Rabba was? Rabba was the rabbi of Abai and Rava. Right? We're talking about Gdolei Olam, right? And you had the Rav Chasta, but everything had to do with Mazal. Rava, and Rava says, there are three things that we always that we ask from Shemayim. Tarti Yavuli, two of them they gave to me. Chada Loivi, one of them did not give to me. Right? What is that? Chokhmate de Ravuna. I prayed for the chokhmah of Ravuna. Okay, so Ravuna was very, very, very smart. So he prayed for the chokhmah of Ravuna, the utre de Rav Chasta, and the wealth of Rav Chasta, the Avuli, and they gave me both of them. Anvatzmute de Rabba Baravuna, but I prayed for the anava of Rabba Baravuna, right? So he says I prayed for anava lo Yavuli, and they did not give it to me. So here he says, one second, so therefore, why would he give it to him? Right? Which means because this is something spiritual. The other two things is something physical. Chokhmah is not something spiritual. Chokhmah, a person can be very, very wise, right? But it's not that he becomes, a Torah scholar overnight. It's just he becomes very wise, right? Wealth is something physical. But this is anava. Anava is something spiritual. So right? The Gemara Berachot there, obviously, it's not the same thing. Okay? So he says, but he was listened to 2 out of the 3. Not bad, no? You got 2 out of the 3. Fine. Rav, Seorim Achuha, right? The Achuha the Rava, we had to commit the Rava. So Rav, right? He was sitting in front of Rava that was mamash on his deathbed, basically. Okay, Chazi David Kaminamnim. So he saw that he was dozing out. Amarle, so Rava comes and he tells his brothers, right? His brother, Lema lemor de lo letzara. Says, go tell the Malach HaMavet, right? So he went and he told, please, Rabbi, go tell the Malach HaMavet not to bother me. Right? Don't. Amarle, he says, more love shushvinehu. Says what? You're not the friend of the Malach HaMavet? Oh, right? You should be the friend of the Malach HaMavet. So Amarle, so he comes and he says, Kevan de imsar mazala lo ashkachbi. Once the mazal was given over to the Malach HaMavet, he doesn't listen to me. Meaning before, he was a good friend with the Malach HaMavet. But now all of a sudden, once the Malach HaMavet now is like his friend, so now that's it. It's not the same. So Amalei comes and he says, right? You should come to me in a dream after death. Amalei, he says, what? Were you suffering? So he says, Amalei, he says, kirivda de kusilta, just like a srita, just like the poke or whatever it is, for a kazata dam. When they come and they bloodlet, when they take out blood, right? There's a poke. So that poke, it hurts at the beginning. So that's what it is. That's what it hurt like. Rava avayati kemeder of Nachman. So Rava was sitting in front of Nachman. Chazid comes in and he saw that he was dozing off. Amarle, he comes and he says, Lema lemor de lo letzaran. He says, go tell the Malach HaMavet not to bother you. Amarle, he says, Mor lo vadam chashuvu. This is what, you're not an important person. Why are you telling me to tell the Malach HaMavet? You're the big rabbi. So he says, Amarle, man chashiv, man safim, man rakia. Who is chashuv in front of the Malach HaMavet? right? He says that the malach hamavet umi metukan menav amalei. So he comes and he says, which means he comes and he says the rakia is metukan is going to be fixed. So he says like this. He says amalei. He comes and he says, litchazel imor, right? Come to me in a dream. Litchazel amalei avelel mor tzara. Did you suffer when you passed away? Amalei, he says, kimishchal binita mechalba. This is what I told you in the Gemara Berachot. It was like you're taking away a se'ar, a hair, right? That you're coming and you're taking it out from chalav. Okay? So he says, ve'amali, right? I told you, look in Berachot Chet Amud Aleph, zemintat neshika. That's what it says on the bottom there in the footnote. Ve'amali, v'amali, and if you told me HaKadosh Baruch Hu, zi ba'i alma kadavit, right? Go, right, in that world and live again. Lo ba'ina, I would never want to do it. Tenefish v'yutute, because of the fear of the malach hamavet that is so great. Right, so that means the fear of the malach hamavet, and he died the easiest of the deaths, right, which is the mitat neshika. But the fear of the malach hamavet is so great. If Hashem would tell him, "Come back to this world again," say no, not because of being afraid of the world, not because of being afraid of falling, right, of the nefilot and the nisyonot, being afraid of the malach hamavet. So he says, "Rabbi Elazar avakach il truma." It once happened that Rabbi Elazar was eating truma. The malach hamavet came to him to take him. Right, so imagine the guy's eating truma. Obviously, it means that he's a kohen, and the malach hamavet comes. Yeah, Amalei comes and he says, "Truma ka'achilna." Right? So he says, "Velav kodesh ikre." He says, "1 second, I'm eating truma." Right? It's not called kodesh. Chalf eleshata. Right? So therefore, right, the time passed. The malach hamavet was not able to take his neshama. What does that mean? The Torah is mazhir to the people that are eating truma and other kochim, that basically that they have to eat it b'tara. So therefore he says, right, he's going to stop him from doing this. If you're going to kill him, right, meaning basically he comes and he tells the malach hamavet, if you're going to kill me, what's going to happen? I'm going to be mitameh truma. Now we can't be mitameh truma. So therefore he was telling the malach hamavet, you can't kill me now. I'm eating truma. You understand? Because if you kill me, the truma becomes tameh. You're not allowed to make truma tameh. So what happened? It passed the time that he wasn't able to kill him because he's eating truma. Okay, another story. Rav Sheshat, are you listening? Rav Sheshat, remember Rav Sheshat was blind. Itchazele beshuka. The malach hamavet came to him in the shuk. Amarle, he says, beshuka kebema. So comes Rav Sheshat, he tells the malach hamavet, what? You're going to kill me in the shuk like an animal, right? Atai eita legabe beta. Come to the house, right? What does that mean? Right? Basically, he wanted to die on his deathbed with kavod, not just stam in the middle of the shuk. Okay, Ravashi, itchazele beshuka. Ravashi appeared to him in the shuk. Amarle, he tells him, itrach li tzlatin yomim. Wait for me another 30 days. Vadrel tell me that because I have to do chazara. Yeah, I have to do chazara. Give me another 30 days. I have to do chazara. The Amritu, because they say, Ashre mi sheba lekan, the Talmudo biyado. This is the Gemara Masechet Batra, right? That we say over there, fortunate is the person that comes, the Talmudo biyado. Okay? What does that mean? He's got his Talmud in his hands. So some people say that it means literally. Some people say that what does Talmudo biyado mean? Look up the Maharsha over there. The Maharsha says it means that you write your learning. Because when you write your learning, you remember it more. Okay? Biyom tlatinata, so after 30 days he came. Amarle, he says, Maikulehai, what's so quick? Kadach beragle devar natan. So the Malach Hamavet answers him, what do you mean I'm going so quick? He says, you're pushing the feet of Bar Natan, because it's already that he's supposed to be the Gadol Ador, right? And you're pushing him away. And one malchut cannot touch the other malchut, even kanonima, which means that the second that it's supposed to be that he's supposed to be the Gadol Ador, you cannot, you're pushing him away because you already have to go, and now the other one has to come into place. Okay, Rav Chasta, Rav Chasta, the Malach Hamavet was not able to take him. The Lav Shatik because he wasn't able to come and to watch. Yeah, and he wasn't able to take away. He was learning the entire time the Torah. The fact that he was learning Torah the entire time, he wasn't able to take him away. So he went up, right, to the on Etz Erez, which is basically a cedar tree on top of the Beit HaMidrash. Paka arza v'shatak. So all of a sudden the tree broke. The second the tree broke, you get startled. You stop for a second. That moment that he stopped, Yachile, was when he was able to take him. Just like what he did to David HaMelech. Yeah, the same concept, right? So he says Reb Chia also Malach HaMavet was unable to take him. Yom Echad idam ele ke'anya. So one day he became like an ani. Ata tarif bebava. So he starts knocking on the door. Amar le, he comes and he says, Apik le rifta. Give me some bread. Apikulu. He took him out bread. Amar le, he says, V'lakav menachem mor anya. Says what? You're not menachem on the poor people? Ahu gavra amaylo ka menachem mor. So if so, one second. If you're menachem on the ani, why are you not menachem on the Malach HaMavet? He's saying you already have mercy for an ani. Have mercy also on Malach HaMavet. Let me take you, basically. So he says Galile. So now he knows Ach vele shuta denuda. He showed him a shot, right, of esh, which is basically a fire. That means basically he showed him that it was like a fiery rod, right? So therefore he says Amtzile nafshe. So he went and he showed and he gave him his life, right? So look how mamash these people were, like mamash were tzaddikim. You understand? We're talking about mamash, like the Malach HaMavet was not able to even come close to them. You
They negotiated with them.
Exactly. Mishnah Kafchet Amubet 28b. Yeah. Gam. What's a gam? Fine. Right. He says Nashim. Yeah. Says the Mishnah Kafchet Amubet 28b. Nashim b'moed me'anot aval lo metapchot. Women on Chol HaMoed, they're allowed to come and they're allowed to read, right, in the lashon of inui, but they're not allowed to metapchot. Metapchot was they used to hit kaf al kaf, right, with the, like they used to actually hit mamash like kaf al kaf, right. He says Bishmel Omer hasmuchot lamita, they're allowed to be metapchot. V'rashei chodashim Chanukah uPurim me'anot metapchot. So on Rosh Chodesh Chanukah and Purim, they're allowed also to do me'anot and metapchot. But remember, these are a lower level than Chol HaMoed. Right? It used to be it was a way of avelut. Right? Don't ask nowadays if we don't do it the way that we used to do it other days. It was a way of avelut. It says here, they used to lakot kaf el kaf, leot evel, to show avelut. Okay? Some people say it used to be al lalev. Some people say it used to be al lalev. Okay, it depends on different things. Okay? Then it says, but whether it's Chol HaMoed or Rosh Chodesh Chanukah Purim, lo mekorenot. They don't do the kinot. The korenot was like a kina. Nikbar met. Once the person was buried, lo me'anot lo metapchot. They're not allowed to do anything. What is inui? Ezo inui? Shekulan onot ke'achat. Everybody answers together. Kina is achad medaber v'kulan onot acharei. One speaks and everybody answers afterwards. Right? That's the difference in kinot and inui. Okay, so the kinot was one person speaks and then everyone would say like a poetic whatever it is. Okay, so it says over here, Shneimar, but it says in pasuk, "Lavdim minotechem nehi v'isha reuta kina." Ave aval lati lavo, but in the future. What does he say? Right? What does that mean? And that's what we say that pasuk, right, for the mourners. Why? Because Bezat Hashem, when it's going to come in the future, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take away the mavet, lanetzach. He will get rid of it for eternity. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will erase dim'ah, right, tears from the faces of all people. Says the Gemara, my Amran. What do they say? Rav says, Vaila azla, vaila chavila. Woe to the travel, right? And woe to the burden, which means oila lalicha kazot, that it doesn't come back. That means basically they're traveling and they're not coming back. And woe to such a burden, right? That they're carrying the deceased. Amar Rav says, Nashedid Shach Netziv, Amri Nachi, the women of Shach Netziv, they used to say like this, Vaila azla vaila chavila. Woe to the azla, the same thing. Woe to the path they're going, and woe to the burden. The Amar Rav and Rav said the Shidduch Satan Amran. They also said, "Good garma mikacha, cut the etzem min hashen from the teeth, v'nimte mayelantiche, and bring water for the mecham." It's a remez for opening up the mouth. Okay, for the dentist. Yeah. So he says, because the mashmaut is that the water is coming out from the mouth of the person, right? It's going back, which means that it's the opposite of drinking. That means basically, since when a person drinks, it goes in, now it's coming out. So this is a mashal that the neshama is coming out. Okay, that's what it means. Okay. The Amar Rav and Rav said, "Nashid shachtan tzavam ranatuf bechasu tureh hitatfu v'tchasu harim." Right? What does that mean? Devar rami uvar rav revehu, because he's a ben nichvadim ben gedolim. Right? That means the person that deceased is mamash. He's got he says yesh l'shamayim sheme'al, right? Harim nachshich. So he says we've got like this choshech now. Okay, that means he was a very great person. The Amar Rav and Rav said the Shel Zamanan shiol itztela deminta, right? The golel, which is basically the kisui of the aron, which is the cover of the coffin, right, which is the mital kura, is like a glima. It's like a clothing. Lebar chorin deshlimu zevadeh. So Ben Tovim, that he finished his nechasim. You know, there was a minhag to put the clothing, meaning like the coat of the niftar on the kevet. They do that usually by the shiva, and by the shloshim, and by the year. Right? That was a minhag also in Morocco. Okay. The Amar Rava, and Rava says, right? Amran rahit v'nafil abra yizufta yazif. He says he's running and he's falling, right? And then and he's actually lending something. He's giving a loan. So he says he was doing everything, and then at the end, he's out of this world. It's like, he has to start even borrowing money for his own shrouds. The Amar Rava, and Rava says, my brothers, the Socharim, the ones which do businessmen, right? Alakanim nivdakim. What does that mean? Alakanim nivdakim? The places where they're going to come and they're going to be doing sechora on their iskaot. That's where they're going to be checked. That means basically, did they do it properly or they didn't do it properly? Were they cheating people in business or not cheating people in business? The Amar Rava, and Rava says, mota kimota umarin chibulaya. His death is like the mitat kol adam, and the yisurim are like tashlumei rebit. So it's like it's like interest that's there. Tanya, we learned to the Braita. Ya Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir says, Tov lalechet vel bet evel. Yeah, milechet bet mishteh. It's better to go to a bet avelut than to go to a wedding. You have a choice. You either have to go to a bet avelut or, right? No, the bet mishteh is a wedding. You don't drink at a wedding. There's the Gemara. We said Rabbi Meir says, "Tov lelecha bet avel, lelecha ve mishteh." It's a pasuk. You can see it over there in the pasuk. It says over there. It's in Gimel, right? Tov lelecha bet avel, milecha ve mishteh. Va'asher hu sof kol ha'adam, va'achai yiten libo. So it says here, what does it mean by ad va'achai yiten libo? Right? Devarim shel mitah, which means that when a person goes to bet avel, they remember the day of death. So once they remember the day of death, right? That's why it's so important. Some people, they don't want to listen. They don't want to learn. Moed Katan, put it away. A person wakes up and they smell the coffee. Until then, they're sleeping. They're in a bubble. They think that they think that they live for 120, right? Right? Exactly, the Chol Moed. That's Moed Katan. Katan is the Chol Moed. Yeah, exactly. Moed Katan is the Chol Moed. Right? There's a Moed and there's a Moed Katan. Moed Katan is the Chol Moed. Yes. ודאי. האמת, זה לא 100%, נכון? זה בדיוק אותו דבר.
בית המשתה גם, וגם זוכה ל5 קולות.
100%, but still the Gemara says, so what's more important? You see, self-introspect is more important. You see, to perfect yourself, זה יותר, בגלל אתה זוכה ל5 קולות, ואתה בונה 5 חומות ירושלים, אבל פה, אתה בונה את עצמך.
יש כאלה הולכים לחתונה ולא זוכים ל5 קולות.
ודאי, they go only to eat.
הולכים לבופה וזהו.
Exactly. They're not זוכה to 5 קולות. But, right here we're talking about the people that are going to be זוכה. Understand? It's like people that they come to a shiur. Some people that are זוכה in the shiur. Some people that are זוכה to a croissant. Understand? So we said, dvarim shel mitah. So therefore you see from here that it's more important to build yourself than to build Yerushalayim. Because yourself, you have a Yerushalayim betochcha. So therefore you see from here, even though you told me you're going to be zoche ve5 kolot, ve'libnot b'cholvot Yerushalayim and everything, but a person has to build themselves. Okay? Very important. If somebody comes and he makes a spedim for the people that pass away, they will do midah keneged midah. They will come. Right? The ikbar. So you have to do it. Do you know that in Gibraltar? Are you listening carefully? In Gibraltar, just to show you here, the Kohanim don't even bother. In Gibraltar, the Kohanim used to come to the cemetery and stand right outside. So when everybody comes inside, they're seeing the Kohen is there. He's not allowed to go in because of Tumah, but he's there. He's at the door of the cemetery. He's not allowed to go inside.
In New York.
But he's at the door of the cemetery. Just to show you. No, he's a Kohen. No. At the door. Mamash, that's where he was. In Gibraltar.
I'm afraid I'm going to be tempted.
Don't worry, don't be afraid. The ikbar, ikbirine. He says those that bury people, they will be buried. Teitani taneh, right? The one that carries the metim, right? Which means the ones that are coming, they're going to carry them from the. They will be carried. Teidal ideloneh, the one that he comes and he picks up his voice when he's doing their sped. They will also do the same thing for him. And some people say the la yidal ideloneh. If somebody's not going to be magbi atzmo mitgaeh, but he's going to be mashpilet atzmo, so then they're going to pick him up. What does that mean? Because when a person comes and he's dealing with the dead, so it's like something low, like he's dealing with dead people in a sense. So no, he was mashpilet atzmo. He didn't have gava. They're going to bring him up. That's what it says. Dichtiv, it says in a pasuk, ki tov amar lach, right lecha alehena, which means it's better that you should be bitsniut, and then afterwards you're going to come to a makom nichbad, then that they're going to take you down from a place of higher up. We learned in the Braita, when the children of Mishmel passed away, there were 4 zekerim that came in to lenachem oto. Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Yosef Galilei, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Akiva. So there are 4 people, 4 rabbis that came to be menachem. Rabbi Ishmael. Amalem Rabbi Tarfon says Rabbi Tarfon, do shecham gadol hu, right? You should know that Rabbi Ishmael is a big chacham. Ubaki bagadot. Don't come and start going, which means, right? Don't come and start, since he was a baki, right? For sure that he's going to be, consoled from every single drasha. Okay, other people say that don't stop each other from speaking, right? Okay, fine. Why? Because since he's a baki, he'll also come speaking to you, and we know that an avel is not allowed to learn Torah. So Amar Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva, right? Vani acharon. I'm going to speak last. So Rabbi Akiva wanted to speak last. Okay, fine. So what happened? It says, Patach Rabbi Ishmael, and says Rabbi Ishmael, Amar, and he says, Rabu avonotav, right? Techafuhu avelav, right? Itriach rabotav pam rishona ushniya. What does that mean? He comes and he said on himself. So Rabbi Ishmael comes and he says on himself, he has a lot of avonot. Right? Rabbi Ishmael is speaking about himself. He's got a lot of avonot. So that's why tachfu avelav, which means 2 of the children died, one right beside each other, meaning one right after another. So if it was tachfu avelav, remember there was one died, one after another. No, hitriach rabotav pam rishona ushniya. There was 2 children. So he says over here, the first time and the second time. So it means basically Rabotav Shel Rabbi Shmuel, which was a bitafon, they came twice to be menachem oto on the 2 different. So he went and he's telling them, I caused twice that they have to come. Now Rabbi Bitafon answers. So this is what Rabbi Shmuel said about himself, that he had a lot of averot. That's why there was tachfu avelav, that he had one avelut after another, and he had to bother them, the rabbis, coming twice. So Rabbi Bitafon comes and he says, so he says, V'halod devarim kavachomer. He says, 1 second. This devarim is a kavachomer. What does that mean? Umada davaviu, just like the davaviu shlosu ela mitzvah achat, they only did 1 mitzvah dichtiv, was such a pasuk. Vayikru v'ne'aron etadam elav, that they went and they brought it. Kach, and still, look at the kavod that all Israel were obligated to do avelut for them. Vanav shel Rabbi Ishmael, look at the children of Ishmael that he did so many mitzvot. For sure we have to come and we have to be mechabed otam. So then comes the next one, and he also has to give tanchumim. It says by Aviyah ben Yerovam, it says that everyone came and they did eulogies and they buried him. So he says it's kavachomer. Uma Aviyah ben Yerovam shelo asa ledvar echad tov. He only did 1 thing good. Dichtiv was written. Ya'anim sabo davar tov. They went and they found 1 good thing with him. So, and look, they had to be mechabed oto. So kach b'nam shel Ishmael, and look at how many good things that he's done. My davar tov. What was the good thing that Rabbi ben Yerovam did? One of them says, he was mevatel the mishmar, and therefore he went up to the Aliyah Regel. Remember the Yerovam Menavat, he stopped everybody doing Aliyah Regel. So Rabbi ben Yerovam, he came and he stopped that mishmar, and therefore they were able to go to do Aliyah Regel. One of them says, it wasn't that it was bitel mishmarto and he went up to the Regel, but rather it was mevatel the shomrim that Yerovam went and he put on the paths, and therefore they were able to go to do Aliyah L'Regel. The next one comes and he says, "Ve'amar b'shalom tamut u'misrefot avotecha hamlachim harishonim asher yu lefanecha ken nisrefu lach v'hoy adon yispdu lach." What does that mean? He comes and he says like this. It says the pasuk there is talking about that he used to burn the mitah of the king and all his tashmishim after he passed away. Because remember that after a king passed away, right, commoners not allowed to use these items, so they used to burn everything. So it says over here, he says like this. He only did one mitzvah. He was a tzaddik gamur, right? But he says the writer was that he had a zechut. So he comes and he says, that he brought up Yirmiyahu Navi from the tit. But it says over here, Sarei Melech, they put Yirmiyahu in a tit, and they left him there to die. Right? Why? Because he went and he was going to say that everything was going to be destroyed. So when the king Tzidkiyahu heard this, so he went and he saved them himself. He took him out of the boar. So he says, Kach banav shel Ishmael, and so to the children of Ishmael, look what kavod we have to do for them. Now, Rabbi Akiva, remember this last one, Rabbi Akiva, he comes and he says, where do we learn this? Masechet Megillah, right? Daf Yomi Amud Aleph, if you remember. We said that on that day it was going to become such greatness, the Hesped and Yerushalayim, like the Hesped Avad Adimon become Igdon. And then we said, if you remember, that if it wasn't for Yonatan Uziel, we wouldn't have understood this pasuk because it was two different Hespedim. It wasn't the same Hesped. Okay, so he says over here, Raman of Yosef says of Yosef, Ilmale Targumeh Daika. If it wasn't the Targum of this pasuk, we wouldn't understand what it is. Who on that time it's going to be such a great Hesped in Yerushalayim, just like the Hesped. The Hesped of Achab bar Imri, the Kata Yated Rimon, right? Just like there was an Achab bar Imri, Melech Yisrael, that he killed him, Hadarimon Teremion, and like the Hesped of Yoshua bar Amon, that he was killed by Paroch Hagira, the Vikam Megiddo. So it's two different Hespedim. Ba'alot varim Kavachomer, it says it's a Kavachomer. Uma Achab Melech Yisrael shelo asa ledvar dechatov, just like Achab, he only did one good thing. Dichtiva Melech Chaya ma'amad b'mekavanoch hacharam, right? So it says over here that after he was going to be, he went and he even though he was hit, right? He went back and he showed Kilu that he was fine, even though because he didn't want that they should also fall. So this is the only good thing that he did. You understand? There's something incredible. That means if they would see that their king fell, so then all of a sudden the morale, everything, so then he went and he showed Kilu nothing happened, and he was already basically dying, right? So what happened is that was the only good thing that Achav did. The only good thing that he did. So he says, if this is what Achav Melech Yisrael did, so now the Gemara is going to say, it's written by Yirmiyahu Navi, by Tzidkiyahu, Tzidkiyahu Melech Beshalom Tamut, and it's written that he went and he blinded him. Nebuchadnezzar came and he blinded him. So what does it mean, Mita Beshalom then? This is what Rabbi Yochanan says, Shemet Nebuchadnezzar b'yamav. He says, no, Beshalom Tamut means that at the end of the day, Nebuchadnezzar died during the days of Tzidkiyahu, meaning the fact that Tzidkiyahu was alive still when he passed away, when Nebuchadnezzar was killed, so therefore that's why he was B'Shalom Tamut. He's going to die in peace because at the end of the day, he was punished during his lifetime. I mean, he saw the vengeance. Okay? So he says, he says, it's written by Yoshiyahu, it's written that they came and they killed him. What does it mean that Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav? Which means they came and they put so many arrows in him, they made him like a sieve. That means they started shooting arrows in the guy. And Mamash, it was like, nowadays they do it with bullets. It looks like a cheese, right? It looks like a sieve, right? Of so many holes that he has. So Amalei Hachim Rav Yochanan, this is what Rav Yochanan says. Shelo charav bet hamikdash v'yamav. No, when it says v'nasafta k'rotecha b'shalom, the bet hamikdash was not destroyed in his days. So that was the shalom that he had. The bet hamikdash was not destroyed during his days. Amar Rav Yochanan says to Rav Yochanan, Enam nachamim nashim lomar davar ad shiftach havel. You're not allowed to say anything until the Avel speaks. Meaning until the Avel speaks. Meaning until the Avel speaks, you don't talk. Yeah, that's what it says. And the ones that are giving the consolement are not allowed to lomar davar ad shiftach havel. Shneimar says in the pasuk, achrechem patach Yov bepiyu v'hadar. And then it's certain, vayan Elifaz Temani. Then Elifaz Temani came and he answered. Amar Rabbi Avu, says Rabbi Avu, minay la'avel shemisav b'rosh. How do we know that the Avel, right, is going to be at the head? Okay, which means, right, it says over here that shemenachamim oshevim oto berosh hachabura. Shneimar says in pasuk, evchar darkam ve'eshev rosh ve'eshkon kemelech bagedud kasher avelim yinachem, just like the menachem avelim. So the Gemara says yinachem achrin mashu. It's much better it's other people, right? Which means that he's being menachem other people. So therefore the opposite, the menachamim should be at the rosh, not the avel. It's written the one yinachem. Yinachem is the one which is receiving the tanchumim. Okay, that's what the nifal. Okay, which means that's what it means over here. Yinachem. Right, so it comes out to the avel to the minachem. Okay, fine. So more zutra. Marzutra Amar, Marzutra comes and he says, Me'acha from here, Vesar Mizrach Mizruchim, Mizrach Nasa Sar Lesruchim, for the Gdolim which are coming, right, to greet him. Okay, so he says, okay, fine. So now the Gemara is going to say as follows, right? It says over here like this. It says, Marzutra, okay, fine. Amar Rabbi Hama Bar Chanina, Minayin lechatan shebes berosh. How do we know that the chatan is also all berosh habura? Shlema ki chatan yechayin peher. Kohen barosh, right? Ma kohen barosh, just like the kohen is always at the beginning, so too the chatan is barosh. Okay, the kohen gufei mina. How do we know the kohen is like that? Tanya the b'mishmem, the Tanya b'mishmem v'kidashto. There's a mitzvah to say the right. The chol davar shebikdusha, right? Liftoach rishon v'rech rishon v'liton manei rishon. So always the kohen, he goes in the first aliyah, he does the first beracha in the seudah, and also he takes the first of the dessert table. Yeah, he's the first one over there. Amar Rabbi Hanina, says Rabbi Hanina, kashe yetziat neshama min haguf ketzipori befi haveshet. So that's why I told you in the Gemara there in Masechet Berachot. What does that mean? Ketzipori befi haveshet. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, right? It's here. It's like chavalim, right? Chavalim shnikshru beim ksharim. You've got knots in a tie. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan says befituri befi haveshet. But it's like chavalim and nishachim derech achor. So I told you already, this is Rashi. You have Rashi here. No, there's a Rashi. There's no Musaf Rashi by you guys?
Like if a bird is stuck into a
right? With cables. Why? Why though? The Yarot Devash will explain that the tzaddik feels mitato bli tsar vekoshi. Right? Just like you're putting the se'ar and you're taking out the hair from the milk. The koshi is only for Rasha. But he's very attached to the body, which is his physical clothing. But since he was so shakua and gashmiut, so it's very difficult for him to leave. The tzaddik, that during his lifetime he was davuk to ruchaniyut, so immediately once they want to take him out, it's immediately he's able to be taken out with any problem. Amar Rabbi Levi bar Chayatas, Kaftet Amud Aleph, 2091, says Rabbi Levi bar Chayatas, Niftar min hamet, after a person comes and they were milaveoto, right, to the place where he's going. Lo yomarlo, they don't tell him lech leshalom, lech bishalom. Haniftar min achai, if a person is going to leave a person that's alive, he never tells him lech bishalom, lech leshalom. Why? We're going to explain. Haniftar min amelo yomarlo lech leshalom, lech bishalom. Shleima, it says in the pasuk, right? It says by Avraham Avinu v'ata tov levatecha bishalom. Right? So therefore, since it is bishalom, it means that he's going to pass away. So Hakadosh Baruch Hu is telling him bishalom, but that's to do with death. Haniftar min achai lo yomarlo lech bishalom, lech leshalom. Share David amar lev shalom, as David Amelech comes and he told of shalom, lech b'shalom, and then what happened? Alach v'nitla, he died. So because of that, right, that's what a person should not do, because comes right Yoav and he killed him. So what happens? Yitro she'amar Moshe, but Yitro that he told Moshe Rabbeinu, lech leshalom, go for peace. Halach v'yitzliach, he went and he had a lot of atzlacha. Ve'amar Rabbi Levi, and says Rabbi Levi, kol hayotzeh mbeit hakneset, anybody that goes out of the beit hakneset, beit midrash to the beit midrash, u'beit midrash to beit hakneset, zocheh u'mekabel shepenei hashechina. He is zocheh to see the penei hashechina. Shneimar yilchu michal echal. You should always go from one place to another place. So you go from the beit hakneset to the beit midrash. That's Yireh Olam Tzion. Then you're going to see, I mean, from all the tefillot and everything, from the learning of the Torah, he's going to see the where we're going to say penei hashechina, and then Amar Rav Chia v'Rav Rashi Amarav Tamidei Chachamim also Be'ezrat Hashem we will finish.